Brian checked his neural implant for the third time, confirming the coordinates of the diplomatic cafe on Station Kepler 442b. The message from the Draconian Empire had been clear. A representative would meet him to discuss the mining rights treaty. What it hadn't mentioned was that Ambassador Scales, the formidable matriarch who'd negotiated 17 interstellar accords, would be replaced. The cafe existed in a pocket of engineered gravity, suspended between the station's spinning habitat rings. Through the transparent aluminum walls, binary stars painted streaks of amber and violet across the void. She arrived exactly on time. Brian's breath caught not from fear, but from the sheer impossibility of what walked through the airlock, where he'd expected the towering, battle-scarred form of Ambassador Scales. A young draconian female stood barely 5 feet tall. Her scales shimmered with an iridescent quality that cyclic chromophores beneath her skin, shifting from deep emerald to sapphire as she moved. 2 small horns curved from her temples, and her tail slender, almost delicate, swayed with nervous energy. "Mama Dragon is sick, so I came instead," she announced in flawless Terran standard, though her translator implant gave her voice a slight harmonic echo. Her golden eyes met his, then darted away. "I am Nyla, daughter of Ambassador Scales. You are..." Brian Chen? The human negotiator? Brian stood, his prosthetic hand extending automatically before he remembered draconian greeting protocols. He converted the gesture into a formal bow. "I am. Please, sit." "Is your mother Ambassador Scales? Is she all right?" Nyla settled into the reinforced chair, her claws clicking against the carbon fiber armrest. She contracted Rigelian flux from the last diplomatic summit. "The doctors say she'll recover, but her immune system requires 3 weeks of nano-reconstruction." She pulled out a data slate, her movements precise, despite her obvious discomfort. She insisted the negotiations continue. "The mining rights for Kepler 442b III expire in 14 days. I understand." Brian activated his own display, holographic spreadsheets blooming between them. "Though I admit, I expected someone with more experience." Nyla's scales flashed crimson embarrassment or anger. Brian couldn't tell. "I have been studying xenoeconomics for 8 years at the Imperial Academy. My thesis on resource distribution in multi-species federations was published in the Journal of Galactic Commerce." Her tail stiffened. "I assure you, I am qualified." "I didn't mean to offend," Brian said quickly. "It's just your mother has a reputation. I prepared for someone who breathes fire in negotiations, literally and metaphorically." A small puff of smoke escaped Nyla's nostrils. "I can breathe fire too. Would you like a demonstration?" Brian blinked. Then he laughed, a genuine sound that echoed in the cafe's acoustic dampeners. "Maybe later. Let's start with the iridium deposits in the Northern Hemisphere." For the next 2 hours, they worked through the treaty framework. Nyla proved her competence immediately, dissecting Brian's proposals with surgical precision. She identified 3 loopholes in the profit-sharing clause that would have cost the Draconian Empire millions. She proposed an alternative taxation structure based on extracted tonnage rather than market value, protecting both parties against commodity price fluctuations. Brian found himself impressed. More than that, he was enjoying this. "You're holding back," Nyla said suddenly, her eyes narrowing. "This counterproposal on labor contracts, it's too generous to my position." "Why?" Brian hesitated. In his experience, negotiations were warfare by other means. Trust was a liability. But something about Nyla's direct gaze, the way her scales shifted to a curious amber, made deception feel wrong. "Because the previous contract terms were exploitative," he admitted. "The mining companies were using Terran environmental laws to dump waste in unregulated zones. Your people suffered for our profit margins." "I won't repeat that mistake." Nyla's membranes, translucent inner eyelids that protected draconian eyes in combat, flickered with surprise. "You're serious. My species has a saying, don't do to others what you wouldn't want done to you. We called it the Golden Rule, back when Earth still had golden things to name it after." Brian pulled up historical data, showing contamination levels from the old mining sites. "I want a treaty that lasts generations, not one that breeds resentment." For a long moment, Nyla said nothing. Her tail curled thoughtfully. Then she reached across the table, a gesture that violated 3 draconian social protocols, and placed her clawed hand over his prosthetic one. "My mother said humans were unpredictable," Nyla said softly. "She warned me you might be ruthless, or foolish, or brilliant. She didn't mention you might be kind." Brian felt heat in his cheeks. "I'm just trying to do the right thing. That's why it matters." Nyla withdrew her hand, but her scales had settled into a warm gold. "Let me propose something. Instead of a 20-year treaty, we draft a framework for indefinite cooperation. Renewable every 5 years, with shared oversight committees. We include provisions for technology exchange, your filtration systems for our thermal extraction methods. We build something that benefits both our peoples." Brian stared at the young draconian diplomat. Ambassador Scales would have driven a harder bargain, squeezed every advantage, turned negotiation into a contest of wills. Nyla was offering partnership. "You're not what I expected," he said. Nyla's laugh was a melodic trill, nothing like her mother's bass rumble. "Mama Dragon taught me the old ways, strength through dominance. But I studied your species' history, Brian Chen. You nearly destroyed yourselves with such thinking. Then you changed. You learned cooperation." Her eyes held his. "Perhaps my species can learn too." They worked until the binary stars completed their dance, drafting a treaty that would reshape mining operations across 3 sectors. When they finally stood to leave, Brian found himself reluctant to say goodbye. "Will you be staying on the station?" he asked. Nyla nodded. "Until Mama Dragon recovers. She'll want to review everything." She hesitated, her tail betraying nervousness again. "Perhaps we could discuss the implementation details over dinner." Brian smiled. "I'd like that, though fair warning, I can't breathe fire." "That's all right," Nyla said, her scales shimmering with what Brian now recognized as happiness. As she walked away, Brian realized that sometimes the best negotiations weren't won, they were shared. And sometimes, the most unexpected diplomats forged the strongest bonds. He checked his neural implant, already scheduling their next meeting. The future, he thought, looked surprisingly bright, even without fire.